Hey guys, John here and welcome to Phase 3. Now that you've seen some promising results with interest scaling and gathered enough data to make lookalike audiences, it's time to move on. The philosophy with our lookalike audience testing is pretty simple. We start with audiences that have the most amount of data points and then gradually move down the list. The custom audiences that will have gathered the most data first will usually correspond to those that appear first in the conversion funnel. So we test our lookalikes in this sequence. First, people who view your video. Second, people who interact with your advertisement. Third, people who view your website. Fourth, people who add your product to their cart. Fifth, people who initiate a checkout. And finally, people who make a purchase. Now, the reason we recommend testing lookalikes in this order is because we recommend a minimum of 500, preferably 1,000 people in your custom audience before making lookalike audiences. And the top of the funnel will reach the minimum requirements the fastest, and the bottom will reach the requirements the slowest. Now, if you haven't hit the minimum requirements, then I recommend spending a bit more time and coming back until you hit at least 500 people in your custom audience. Now, before we jump into creating the custom audience and lookalike audiences, let's talk a bit about what types of lookalike audiences we'll be testing and what ranges of percentages we'll be using. Now, based on the conversion funnel, the custom audiences that will collect the most amount of data fastest will be video view 75%. So we'll test out video view 75% first, then Facebook engagement, then page view, and then just continue down the list as soon as they hit the minimum audience size requirements. Now, depending on who you ask, you may get very different opinions regarding what percentages of similarities to test with lookalikes. The best option for you to use is entirely dependent on your initial seed audience quality and demographics as they relate to your product. As such, I prefer initially testing wide ranges of lookalikes to get an idea of what's working well, so that I can stick to those further down the road. Now, I've seen people test their lookalikes by splitting them into very small segments like this: page view 1 to 2%, 2 to 3%, 3 to 4%, etc. Now, I find this approach to be unnecessary and potentially detrimental. This will require you to have many ad sets within your CBO, which could potentially result in poor CBO performance due to distributing your budget too thin. Additionally, each lookalike would be limited in size, and this tends to result in poor optimization on both the ad set and CBO level. So you're almost always better off using large lookalike splits like this: page view 1%, 2%, 3%, and all the way up to 10%. Now, in my experience, a 2% versus a 3% lookalike will not really perform all that differently. So what you want to do is vary the selection so you have fewer ad sets, which will allow Facebook to distribute more budget towards each ad set. So I recommend that you skip percentages in between and test 1%, 3%, 5%, 7%, and 10% lookalike values. This will give you a good testing range and will also allow your CBO to perform better overall. So putting all of these things together, once you have enough data, you can start off by testing your video view 75% audience first. Now, because I have a very large ad budget, I start my CBO with a $500 budget. However, if you're less comfortable or don't have a lot of cash flow, anything from $100 to $500 will work just fine. Now, I'll make 5 ad sets with the same settings as the previous phases and use video views 1, 3, 5, 7, and 10% lookalikes. For the creative, I'll pick my best performing creative thus far and duplicate it twice per ad set. So to recap, the entire structure looks like this: 1 campaign, 5 ad sets, and 2 ads per ad set for a total of 10 ads. Alright, so let your ads run for a day, and then we can evaluate them. The process you'll go through to analyze and manage your campaigns in Phase 3 is going to be similar to the process you used in Phase 2. You'll once again be using % target cost per purchase as a guideline on whether or not you should increase or decrease your budget. If your campaign is very profitable, you'll definitely want to increase your daily budget. Once again, the intensity of scaling will be proportional to your cost per purchase. If your cost per purchase is less than 80% of your target cost per purchase, then you can double the budget. If your cost per purchase is less than 70% of your target cost per purchase, then you can triple the budget. And if your cost per purchase is less than 60% of your target cost per purchase, then you can quadruple the budget. Now, if your cost per purchase is between 81% and 100% of your target cost per purchase, you can then increase your budget by 50%. So simply take your existing budget and multiply it by 1.5. And when it comes to unprofitable scenarios, we're going to be more strict in our approach. At this point, lookalikes should be providing you with better performances than your interests, and if this isn't the case and you aren't at least profitable with your lookalike campaigns, you should probably turn them off and go back to scaling your interests. Most of the time, if your lookalikes perform worse than your interests, this probably means that you don't have quite enough data yet. So in this scenario, I would say to turn off your campaigns, increase your custom audience size by 500 to 1,000, and then come back and try again. Now, before I wrap up this module, I wanted to briefly talk about how to start introducing additional lookalike audiences if things are going well with page view and video view 75%. Technically, it's not even necessary that you have to test and use all of your lookalikes. On some ad accounts, we never touched any of the lookalikes other than page view and video view, since we were able to quickly gather enough data to move on to phase 4. But in many cases, you'll find that some lookalikes will perform better than others. This will of course depend on things like your funnel and how each audience behaves, so you may as well test them if you're not finding yourself arriving at phase 4 anytime soon. Generally, what I will do is test each lookalike as soon as its custom audience reaches 500 to 1,000 pixel fires. If things aren't looking too great, I will come back and retest that audience every 500 to 1,000 pixel fires. For each of these, I will utilize the same exact campaign management strategy, adjusting budgets and turning campaigns off as necessary based on your % target cost per purchase. That being said, don't be discouraged if you find that a particular lookalike audience doesn't really perform as well as others do with the same number of data points. We've sometimes found that add to cart and purchase lookalikes require many more data points to perform at the same level as a 500 data point page view lookalike does. Ultimately, you just have to keep on testing and introducing new audiences to find out what works best for you. Now, in terms of moving on to the next phase, this is where things get a bit tricky. Phase 4 is where you'll be using a scaling strategy that relies on having a significant amount of data and an optimized ad account. It's difficult to pinpoint when this is for any particular person. Now, we've seen it vary greatly from ad account to ad account. In the past, accounts were generally ready once they hit $25,000 in spend. However, we found that in 2020, some accounts were ready for this method in as little as $5,000 total ad account spend. In any case, I recommend that once you have maintained CBOs that are either break even or profitable for several days and have a total of at least $5,000 of ad account spend, you head over to phase 4 and give it an initial shot. If the initial shot fails, then just go back to scaling your lookalikes and try it again after another $5,000 of spend. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful, and if you haven't already, go ahead and set up your campaigns for phase 3 and let them run. At this point, you're likely seeing profits coming in fast and you're acquiring data like never before. You've nearly made it to the end game where you will be effortlessly scaling higher and higher with relative ease. If you have any questions or concerns about anything in this lesson, feel free to post on our private Facebook group and we'll do our best to get back to you in a timely fashion. That's it for now, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.